is the inventory page, which can be found in the bid sheet estimation template in the online content for this title. Obviously, this is how I keep track of the paint in my shop. Because I work mostly in an academic setting, we don't buy our paint for each individual show. Instead, we buy a stock paint for the entire season. And I keep track of that show by show for a couple different reasons. One, I can see how students' estimations are stacking up against what they physically used, as well as what's being used for class. I also may want to keep track of stock for a particular job or for insurance purposes. But either way, I find a digital setup very handy, as I can use it in Excel and Microsoft OneDrive or Google Sheets in Google Drive to update the document live while in the shop on my phone or tablet. So I can add a column, whether I am inserting a column to allow me to carry the formatting over, or just adding on to the end. I also input in whole numbers and estimate usually within the closest quarter of a gallon. These are always in gallons, as it is in the rest of the document. But I also sometimes estimate about 0.9 if I'm almost at the end, if there's barely any missing from a gallon, but it is open, and 0.1 if there's just scraping the end of a can of paint. The thing I'm most interested in this list is, one, knowing when I'm running out of paint. So that is why the conditional formatting here has a nice formula for me that is set up to change everything red when the cell value is below 1. This is applied to all the cells in this area so that any of the numbers that I input for the cans that drop below a certain number, it will give me a good result. The other thing I'm mostly interested in is the difference between how much paint I had before the show and how much paint I had after the show. So there are two ways I can do this. One is to make a whole column with the cost of the differences, and two is to add up the total cost of each column so that I can make sure I know how much was spent in between each. So for the cost of difference, I just take a dedicated column and I write a formula for each row. I'm going to go ahead and do this row because there's a difference between these. So to do this formula, I'm going to add equals, and I'm going to take the amount before the show minus the amount after the show and multiply that by the price. Now I want to go ahead and put in parentheses the subtraction to make sure that that happens first, and hit enter. So that gives me $6. Now I can hand type this formula all the way down this line, but instead I'm going to right click on this cell, hover in the corner until my plus sign cursor changes color to that darker color, and then click with the left mouse button and drag in order to copy that formula. I'm going to do the same thing to copy that formula up as well. And now each one of these formulas have changed respective to their row, and the columns have stayed the same. So at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and do a simple sum formula. And go sum, click the top cell in the range that I want to add, hold the shift key, click the bottom range, end parentheses, and enter. And now I have my total of what that difference costs. Now the other thing we can do is a single formula, and this is a sum product formula. And this is what I usually do at the bottom of each inventory row, and that prevents me from having these cost difference rows popping up in the middle of my document in places. That way everything up here is just inventory all the way across. So for this, I want to take this column of numbers, multiply it by this column of numbers, and then add that difference together. So that formula is called sum product. So I'm going to go ahead and type sum product, and that's going to give me the beginning. I'm going to go ahead and select the first column in the first range, hold shift, click the last column, end parentheses, comma, and then space, and I'm going to grab the second array that I want to multiply it against, which is going to be the price. So again, I click the top cell, hold shift, click the last cell in the range. Now I'm going to close parentheses and click enter, and I've got my total. One of the nice things about this price range is that once again, if you click on it, these are not individually entered, they're a VLOOKUP. So this is going to update with the price list that's in this document like everywhere else where this price exists. So I can go ahead and live update the cost of this first paint. When I go back to my inventory, that's going to be updated. So if I want to move this formula over and have it apply to every other column in this row, I can do the same thing where I grab the bottom and drag, but it's not going to work this time. So what happened is if I look up here, those two ranges, it's now multiplying this range times this range. The same way this cell was multiplying the range above it and the range directly to the left. Those things both move proportionally. So instead, I'm going to come back into this first formula and add a $sign, which is shift 4 right in front of the B. And what this tells Excel is that I want you to change this range appropriately, but not this range. This range I want to stay the same no matter how and where you drag it along the column. So now when I drag it again, this time it'll work. We can double check that it works by clicking here, and you can see that those two ranges are highlighted, and that every time we drag this across, it will be using the correct prices from B, and since those are all VLOOKUP prices, the prices will always be accurate to the price list in the document. All right, that's it, and that's how to keep your inventory up to date.